A show that tackles the big issues affecting the BVI and the rest of the Caribbean. Searches for answers to today's big questions and gives viewers a unique perspective on developing stories. Follow the big story with me, Kathy Richards, only on JTV. This is The Big Story. I'm Kathy Richards. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition. We're in the season and we're going to be continuing to have persons on set who are presenting themselves for upcoming general elections 2023. And we have in studio today a very familiar face. Not necessarily on the Big Story set, but a very familiar face here in the territory. A strong woman, Ingrid Moses. Ingrid, thank you so much for being here. You are a candidate with the Progressive Virgin Islands movement.
Thank you for having me, Kathy, and happy International Women's Day to you and all the women listening. It's a pleasure for me to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to get right into it. We are familiar with you most recently being the Speaker of the House of Assembly. We have been for some time hearing on the ground that, this is a good candidate to contest the general elections, and here you are now. Why you would have made this decision at this time?
Yes, it has been a long time in coming, Kathy. I have thought, pondered, prayed for quite some time, and persons have done the same thing with me, and I finally made the decision. And the question is really, if not now, when? I think at this point in our territory's history, it is one of the most critical periods that I certainly will and have experienced in my lifetime. And I think the opportunity is now for persons who are strong, capable, competent, have something to offer to help reset the territory and restore the territory of the Virgin Islands to what we know it to be, what my parents who migrated here many years ago in the early 60s, what they helped build along with our forefathers and many other residents and citizens of the territory. We built up a BVI, and I think we have a duty and responsibility to give back some of what the BVI has given to us. And that is the reason why I put myself forward.
Okay, we're having this conversation in a time when women are being celebrated internationally. When it comes to the political arena, the way women are seen in politics is a totally different ball game to that of a man. How do you see yourself in this arena?
Politics is a patriarchal system. It has always been. It's dominated by men. And unfortunately, because of everything that comes with that system, women have been deterred from actually stepping into politics because we are not measured by the same yardstick that men are. We decide to enter politics, the issues that men get a slap on the wrist with, for us, everything is highlighted. The color of your hair, the color of your lipstick, what you're wearing, where you go, what you do, who you're with. For a man, it doesn't matter. And the sad and unfortunate truth is that the vast majority of the campaigns worldwide for any election and the grassroots campaigns are run by women. They hold prominent position in the parties, on the ground. They're the ones who champion the men. They're the ones who make up more than half the population of voters. But sadly, to put yourself forward, it's a big risk and it's a big responsibility because you answer not only to yourself, but to your families. I have a daughter. She has concerns, and I've always had concerns even when I became speaker because it affected her. Because a lot of the times, we are very unkind people. We say things and we don't even think about the impact it's going to have on not necessarily me, but our families, our children. They read, they hear, they go to school, and then things are said and they get affected. So for us, for me, it's a bold step, and I commend all women to step forward and rise to the occasion, because I do think more than ever that this is the time. The time is now where we need strong, capable, competent people, but more importantly, women in leadership to show all that we've been doing for all these years. We are the greatest multitaskers. Okay, we lead successful lives, we lead businesses, we run companies, we have children, we have a family, we have family responsibilities, and we tend to do everything. But
most of all, we walk 9 months with a baby in us, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, and yet we do everything
while we're doing it.
Yes,
absolutely, and more,
and more. Yes.
So I think more than now, it's imperative.
How do we push a balance? How do we push for a balance when it comes to dealing with men and women in the political arena?
I think it first starts with having a greater proportion of women in parliament, because you have to start. And yes, we are also sometimes our worst enemies because we don't support each other. And that is a big slap for us sometimes, and we have to get out of that, because we have more than what it offers, and we have more than what it needs to bring to the table. We just need to be given the opportunity, and if we all stick together and support each other, because the men always support each other, always. It doesn't matter what they do in their personal lives or anything else.
They're there for each other.
But we need to support each other, because it's a big risk to put yourself forward to the public, to offer yourself to serve people. And I think we need to recognize that it takes a lot of courage and strength to actually do that, and we need to give everyone, but more particularly women, because we're the underdogs in the race. We get slaughtered. And it can be very demoralizing, but you have to have a broad back, suck it in, do what you have to do, because it's bigger than any one of us. I think we are needed more than ever now than any other time in history.
And talking about being a strong woman to deal with things like these, you would not just wake up yesterday and decide that you are qualified enough to enter such an arena. Give us a little bit about your background. I was reading a little bit of your bio not too long ago, and I realized there are so many firsts, and quite a number of the only. Tell us about those.
Okay. I was the first Virgin Islander to be accepted onto the Management Development Program for Barclays Bank PLC, which was one of the leading financial institutions in the world and actually in the territory at the time. I was also the first and the youngest appointed head of operations for the same branch, with responsibility for over 50 persons of a complement of 72, managing a main office, 2 branches, one in Virgin Gorda, one in Eastern, and 6 ATMs. And I can just interject here. That was 20 years ago.
Oh.
One bank having 2 branches, one in Virgin Gorda, one in Eastern, and 6 ATMs, including one in Virgin Gorda, one in Eastern, one in Western, one in Port Purcell. So fast forward, and those branches operated every single day. We actually had dedicated staff living on Virgin Gorda, operating those branches. Most of the employees, actually all of the employees, lived on Virgin Gorda. I had responsibility, so once a month I had to go over and visit and make sure staff were doing fine, the businesses were being conducted satisfactorily in accordance with banking standards. And it's sad that 20 years later we have actually regressed. So.
Wow. That's a bit of information to cause us to think and to know that we have someone who is now running for government that can probably be very instrumental in getting us back to that place. Because one of the biggest cries for persons, especially on those sister islands, Jos Van Dyke, Anegada, Virgin Gorda, is for working bank facilities. There, for Virgin Gorda, there is There's always a complaint of, not always having money or not opening, regularly. But on Anegada, Yas Van Dyke, there is none.
It's a shame, really. It's a shame because Virgin Gorda has one of the top economic activity. The hospitality industry there, the entire BVI. But when you go to Virgin Gorda, it's a whole different standard. The service, I mean everything from the time you get on the ferry till you get over there. But when I was in the bank, the next ATM that we were looking for was for Anegada. We were actively looking at the outer islands. Because at the end of the day, banks are there, yes, to make money, but you also have a responsibility to the community that you operate in. It's not all about the money, but money comes by way of you doing business there. Because one of the things...
Money follow money.
There you go. When we had the branch in Virgin Gorda, we had all the businesses in Virgin Gorda. Everybody went there to open their accounts, to purchase their cars, to get mortgages, to start their businesses, because that's what you get. Once you have a physical presence on the ground that persons can go into and do their business, that's what people want. So we were thinking, back then, banking was different. The persons in the bank were also different because you actively cared about the community you operated in. The relationships that I have had them from back then because I entered the bank at 15 years old when I graduated from high school.
So just give us she just allowed us to, without we asking, to calculate her age. Don't roll back the tape, let it go. So it's something that means a whole lot to you.
That's where I grew up. That's where my family are. That's where persons took me under their wings and molded me into who I've become today. It's because of, I had so many mothers in there. And that was just, the environment was exceptional because people genuinely cared about each other and treated you like family. So I went in there as a young girl, left to go to school, worked every summer, every Christmas, and came back and was able to get accepted on the management development program, which is an accelerated program to fast-track managers, and became a manager at the bank.
That takes us to a different level of this conversation. It just got switched. One of the things that we hear so much, especially among our young people, where employers keep saying that, they can't find young people who are now committed, who are passionate about entering certain jobs. When they get into certain jobs, they are acting irresponsibly as if the job owes them something, in terms of them putting themselves out to be, good workers. There seems to be a challenge in how some section of young people apply themselves to the job market. Let's talk a little bit about that from your perspective. Having been a person who was trusted out there from the age of 15.
I think the problem is endemic, but it goes deeper than that. It goes to the heart of the social fabric of our society, because a lot of it stems from how you were raised. It goes back to the home. And I'm not saying that homes have to have two parents. You just need to have a home, a safe space and a safe place. And as young as those children are, I have a daughter, but I have found that children are the most manipulative persons in the world, as little as they are, because they know when they cry, you respond to them crying. So when they're 1 and 2 years old and you see them doing something that they're not supposed to do, you're supposed to correct them.
And keep correcting.
And keep correcting them.
Keep correcting.
And then also the community raised children. I grew up in a community in Parcel, well, we say Puzzle. But in Parcel, my mother worked nights every day for my entire childhood. She only worked evenings. She only worked in the days, when I went off to university. So guess who I was home with? It was the neighbors. But guess what? When the sun go down, you better be inside. So the community played a greater part in raising, and everybody was in each other's house. The neighbors looked out to make sure you were all right. And if you walked across the street and you didn't say good afternoon or good morning to somebody in the village, it didn't have phones then, but somehow your parents would know before you reach home that you had done that and you would be disciplined. And talking about discipline, it wasn't just the parents. It was everybody felt they had the right to reprimand you when they needed you. It could be in church. It didn't matter where. I got disciplined in church. I was talkative. I got picked up, moved on a bench by myself many times. Oh yes, you got your ears pulled. But it was the entire community that helped raise me, and I think that's what's lacking, because we've probably become too selfish as a people because we think about ourselves only, but it's not ourselves. We don't exist in a bubble. It's the entire community, and if we don't play a significant part in helping our community, then the outcome is that we will all suffer from the products of that society, and which is what is happening now. So going back to the question you asked about children coming in with work ethics, you can't do what you don't know. That's one. Now, I firmly believe that the vast majority of children are given the same opportunities from as young as they are, then they stand a fighting chance. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And that was something I remember having conversations when I was speaking, when we would have lunch with the members, and I would say that a child is not a child is not a child. I know my child would do fine, your children would do fine, but a lot of other person's children wouldn't, because we don't have the same start. Because I learned when my daughter went to private school and went into Elmore Stout High School in Farm 2, I got a massive eye-opener to the issues that were actually there. It's not that you don't know that they're there, you know. It is that when you are so far removed, you don't appreciate the extent of what the issues are. But when she went in there in second farm, she was like a little counselor, because everybody came to her with issues, and then I became actively involved in trying to help, and it was an eye-opener. You have children going to school at 4 p.m. in the afternoon who have never had a meal for the day. So tell me, how is it that that child is supposed to be productive on the same level as your child who had a breakfast in the morning, who had lunch, and who had dinner? It can't work. You have children who don't have the necessary school supplies. They don't have a safe environment to go home to at night. The parents are struggling to make ends meet, but there's no proper support system in place. So what do we do? And I think if each one of us try and help one, then we would go a long way in helping with the issues. But sadly, a lot of it doesn't happen. But its fundamental issues are what have taken us to the point where we are at now, and we're in crisis because we're losing young people, we're losing young men faster than anything. And I always tell people, it's double standards. The patriarchal political system is double standard, but the way we raise our children is double standards, because now you take your girls and you make sure your girls are in the house when the sun goes down. But the boys are allowed to stay out all hour, come in when they want, as if they are grown-ups. They are not. When the sun goes down, you go look for your child. You have a responsibility to look for your child. And you should never be leaving your workplace to go home and your child is in town. You have to find them, because that is your responsibility. Because when you don't do that, the worst thing any parent wants is a telephone call from the police or the hospital saying your child got injured or died. That's every parent's worst nightmare. So for me, we have to do better as a people. I do it, my daughter gets embarrassed all the time, because when I see, I open my mouth and I start conversations with young people, and it's amazing the stuff that you hear from them, and your heart literally bleeds. It bleeds because the stories, and they have a lot to say. They don't always say it to everybody, because you have to engender trust, and they have to recognize that you really care about what it is happening, and not that you're using it as an opportunity to do something else. And you have to be very, very mindful, because I remember, same thing going back to the high school, and when I realized that so many children weren't having lunch, I remember giving my daughter money to give to students to buy lunch. But this is what happened. She went to school and she asked them if they had anything, and they said they were fine. She came back. I said, no, don't do that. Just give it to them and tell them your mother sent it. Buy some lunch. Because they have pride. At the end of the day, they still have pride. They do not want anyone to know what their circumstances are at home. You have to try and glean and discern what the issues are with them and have a conversation with them. Because a lot of them, it needs intervention, but the intervention unfortunately starts too late. I remember when I started going to youth court in 2010, I was struck. I could not believe what I was hearing before the courts.
You need to go
All
to
school
bed,
children.
yeah.
But how can you be absent from school 80-something times? Are you asking Mr.
In
South?
small BVI.
How is that possible? But that's the kind of stuff you were hearing. So if you are being a truant student, how could you be absent? It must be a red flag, because if you're absent 1 or 2 times, then you need to trigger something. It cannot get to that point, because clearly they're losing the way. And from my experience, what I recognize is that most of the children were doing fine up to primary school. Up to class 4, they start showing certain tendencies. But when they get into the high school, they got lost. And of course, what's going to happen, the natural progression, because if their circumstances do not change, and for those of us who have a safe space and a safe environment that we can go home to in the evening, whether it is a little crowd, I don't really care. Once it's a safe space for me. If we don't have that, then we're in serious trouble, because a lot of people do not have that. They do not have that. And because of that, they are not able to thrive and become the individuals that they are truly destined to become, because their circumstances are so stacked against them. So for me, we need to do something, and we need to do something now, because we're losing them too fast, too often, and it's a whole generation we're losing, and we cannot just sit by and let that happen. We have to start at the root cause, which is the social fabric of our society.
That last question just opened up Ingrid Moses to her real true self, and that is a passion for young people, a passion for community. And I think I would have seen that back in 2014, I think, when you led the charge with the youth summit that was held on here, Tortola and Virgin Gorda. I saw a bit of that, but this depth, if you realize I did not interrupt you, allow you to speak, because it speaks exactly to where your passion definitely lies. Now put that in the space of a legislator.
First of all, you have to identify what the root problem is. All the other things are cosmetics. You have to go to the source. It's social issues that are now culminating in what we're now dealing with as a society. So to say we're labeling all the young men and women, they're smoking this, there's a reason why they're doing it. It's a root cause to that. So we have to get to the root and put mechanisms in place. Why don't we have a meal program in the high school? Why don't we have that? It could be breakfast only, but at least you know you could get 1 meal guaranteed. Why can't we do that?
Break that morning wind.
Why can't we do that? You cannot perform effectively if you haven't had anything to eat for the day. And I don't mean Cheetos. I mean a proper meal. And you go to the supermarkets, you can't afford to buy the real stuff, the fruits. Because a cantaloupe is $8. That's 1 cantaloupe. You can't afford to buy them. So get to the root cause of the problem. Put immediate things in place, because if you can ensure that students have something to eat, whether it is lunch or breakfast, you can determine which one is the most effective meal, because not everybody eats early. But what I've also learned is that in asking young people, and one of the first questions I always ask, you ate for the day? Just casually, because I'm trying to find something out. When you hear no, I give you money to buy something to eat, because I know with the stomach empty, you can't get anything done. You can't get anything done. So if we could get there and we put policies and legislation in place, and we recognize that we talk the talk, that there are future generations, but if you don't put things in place to preserve that future generation, there's no future generation. We have chaos. And they're hurting, and families are actually hurting. They have real issues with their children. We don't know how to resolve conflict. And there's a lot of conflict. Conflict comes in many forms and fashions. But we don't know. So when you see young people smoking and drinking, it's just like an alcoholic. It's to take away this having to deal with that underlying issue. And they do it constantly is because they don't want to have to deal with it.
And then it becomes chronic.
And it becomes chronic. And it's the same thing with violence. It's there are deeper issues that we need to get to the core. What is causing it? What's happening at home? What's happening here? Just ask a question. We get to that, and we start listening to them first of all, and then putting what we need to put in place. Start simple, start small, but do something. Don't just pay lip service. Do it where it matters. Put a program, a cafeteria program in the school. Make sure that every student has a meal every day. That's for starters. Then at least they know. And we can have public partner privateships, which is how it works to build up your community, and put legislation in place to ensure it's not left up to any individual person. This is what I feel like doing now. At this government that comes in, this is what we will do, but then another government comes in. No. We need a national plan. These are national issues. So we have to have them hard-coded. It doesn't matter who comes, but we recognize and prioritize the areas in our society that need addressing now, because we are so far behind. I think my daughter's generation, they're almost gone. This is how far, we're gone, period. But if she's almost gone and she's 22 years old, we have a serious problem, because the little 2 and 3-year-olds and ones come in, what are we leaving for them? How are they going to thrive, to be sustaining individuals, when we haven't done our part to ensure that we give them equal opportunity to thrive? Not for some, for all.
You almost leave me a little speechless, because this is not the direction that we initially anticipated this interview to go, but this is what we need to hear from the people we are looking to put into a government, because you have to have a heart for your people, you have to have a heart for your country, and you cannot represent in the legislature without having that heart, because if you don't have the heart, you don't know what is going on, and it's the real issues that are affecting societies that legislators are called to address, so that we can make life better. Absolutely. Before we close this discourse, one last thing. You would have been the Speaker of the House of Assembly, which meant that you would have sat in debate, you would have sat when bills and acts are put before the House. What it is from that you are taking with you now to say to the people of these Virgin Islands, elect me and I can be very efficient and effective?
You have to, first of all, know who you're electing to serve and represent you as a person, as a people. It doesn't matter whether or not you like me or like that individual. It's who can get it done and who has a heart for the people. Because we don't see color, creed, nationalities. We're all human beings, we're people. And legislation comes to the House of Assembly to pass, I read. One of the things you must always do, and this is a fundamental that your parents would teach you or your grandma, prepare. Wherever you're going, you have to prepare. If you're going to school, make sure you do your homework, make sure you have your pens, your pencils, etc. Prepare. You're going to the House of Assembly, you have to prepare for the legislation that you're going to deal with. You have to read it first of all. You have to engage with the populace to find out what their views are on the legislation that is going to be passed before them, because it's going to affect them. And I have seen, I understand when I sat in that speaker chair, how legislation is passed. And sometimes some members don't even know what is passed. Because you have to read and you have to prepare, and we have to demand more from our electorate, because we have the power to put you there, you have the power to put me there, but you also have the power to remove me from there. And if I'm not doing the job, if I don't deserve to do the job, then don't put it there. But don't put people in place because you like them, you don't like them. They're not from here. We all one people. All we're trying to do is work together for one common good, so that all of us, BV Islanders, residents, visitors, citizens, can all truly live one BVI. Because that's what it is. We're all one people.
In this moment, Ingrid, 30 seconds to your audience directly.
I am Ingrid Moses-Scatliffe. I am running as an at-large candidate on the Progressive Virgin Islands Movement ticket. I'm kindly asking you to give me the opportunity and the entire PIVM team to serve the territory of the Virgin Islands. We have a strong, competent, capable group of individuals who want to restore integrity, transparency, accountability, most importantly, hope and inspiration to the people, you, us, so that we can all work together collectively to restore this territory to what it was and what we know it to be. Thank you.
Awesome. I want to thank you so much for sharing your heart here today. It's International Women's Day at the time of this recording, and in every sense, we would have heard the heart of a woman. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for taking time out to share this moment with us here on The Big Story. I'm Kathy Richards.